Hi, I feel like I didn't do a very good job with the intro, so I'm going to try again with the voiceover. So, we're interviewing Calvin Wayman today, and he is from the Centennial group, which is also known as The Work. We refer to it as both. All of Calvin's social medias is linked down below. He has a YouTube, we've got the Instagram, podcast, everything's linked down below, as well as the interview that he does with my brother Eskel. And I say this at the end of the video, but I'm going to say it right here, right now. He will be on the Culty Cup of Coffee live on Sunday, number 68, and he will be there answering any questions that you guys have from this video. I'm just going to explain what this next clip is, just in case any of you are listening on the podcast, the Culty Crew podcast. This next clip is a recording of the leader, essentially, of the Centennial group. His name is John Timpson, and we're going to roll just a tiny little snippet so you can hear what it's like to be a member of this amazing work.
If you've got friends like that, you ought to get rid of them so damn fast. It makes their heads spin. And if any of you here are anti-priesthood, you heard it today. Get out. It's against the rules of being here.
Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Amanda Ray, and when I was 17, almost 18 years old, I left a polygamous cult known as the Order. If you're interested in hearing my story, I'll leave the links to videos with ex-Order members and my story in the description box down below. But today we have a special guest here, which is Calvin, and he's not from the Order. So I'm going to probably say that a lot in this video because people get confused with all these different polygamous cults.
Totally. Most people don't know that there's actually so many fundamentalist Mormon churches that are scattered.
And there's, I don't know how accurate this is or how you could even pinpoint this, but I heard there's 30 to 40,000 polygamists in Utah alone.
That's what I've heard. Yeah, that sounds what I've heard
right?
as well. Yeah, I mean, in my case, when you have one dad that has 45 kids, I mean,
That's why I'm going to be saying it a lot, like we're the Order and you came from the
work.
The Work. So this is going to be some new information that we're getting. But before we get into the video, I want to reference Calvin's YouTube channel, and you also have a podcast.
Launching a podcast, yes.
When is that going to launch?
TBD, but you can go to calvinwomen.com/podcast to get notified when it goes live. It's called Cultured. Super excited for it. And then, yeah, YouTube, Calvin Women on YouTube.
That's such a smart name. Why didn't I think of that?
Cultured.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why did I think of that?
It took me a long time, I'm not going to lie. I sat on, I was like, I was going to call it like forbidden fruit for a while, like to talk about things you can't. I'm like, what is the word? But I like the wordplay. Obviously, you caught that. Yeah. Good catch on the cult. But also, like, I've been living a big life of trying new things, and the word cultured is like having life experiences, trying things. So yeah, I like it.
I like that. So everything we just talked about, all the links will be in my description box down below for anyone who's interested. And then I did want to say one thing before we got into this. We didn't know that we were kind of associated. I don't know that I've ever met you, but I met your sister.
Yeah.
Isn't that weird?
So weird.
So I had a friend, it was Daniel's daughter, who apparently was really good friends with two of your sisters. So we snuck out one night, and she's like, I want you to meet my friends. We go over to this house. Did you guys live like in Salt Lake area?
So if you went to Salt Lake, then you went to my cousin's house probably.
But Janet was there.
Yeah, she probably snuck out. Janet.
Oh. We sneak in through like the kitchen door, we go up to the bedroom, and I thought it was just like gonna be two girls there. All of a sudden I see these shadows of all these girls coming over. It was a room full of it was like the girls' room. And we all sat in a circle and we talked about how weird it was that our dads with polygamy and like how many kids are in the family.
That's so, dude, I'm so jealous of my sisters that they got that figured out way earlier in life when they're in high school. I was homeschooled, so I didn't get to have the outside ideas.
So Janet is your full sister?
Full sister. Which I didn't even know there was such a thing as full and half, which I'm sure we're
we were talking about that. Okay, that gets me to my first question. It was how many moms did you have?
I grew up with 4 moms.
4?
Yeah, 1 dad, 4 moms, 44 siblings.
Wow. And
all in the same house.
All in the same home. So yeah, for us I had 3 moms, different homes. Were any of the moms sisters?
No.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, which all of them are very different last names.
Just keep their last name, their maiden name when they marry your dad?
Yeah, except my birth mom, who's the first wife, because legally, and then the other ones, of course, in fundamentalist Mormonism, like nobody actually, like a second or third or fourth wife don't actually like legally get married because you can't.
They have the spiritual wedding.
Yes.
Is it like a secret wedding?
Yes.
Oh,
totally.
That's like ours too. Crazy.
I just have to say, this is what I love. Like we're just gonna, because we're probably gonna come out of like interview mode. Like, I'm just so curious to talk to you about. We grew up in completely different ones, and to find the similarities and the differences, even though we grew up in completely different ones, I'm fascinated.
So this is going to uncover a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Which with yours, it's so cool that they kept their maiden names. Ours had fake names. Like Grant is a fake last name.
You guys, okay, hold on. Some people did that.
Why?
Probably the same reason you did. To hide the sniff of the law.
Okay, so
right?
then now my question is, did they do fake fathers on the birth certificates? Because we did that too.
One of my 3 moms had a fake last name. Her real last name was Musser, which she came from Guy Musser, which is a big figure in FLDS culture, or fundamentalist Mormon culture. But she went by Sorensen.
Oh.
So, and again, did you guys do it so that like the law would not know and like
who the dad was? Because our mom's the second. Eskel's here, by the way. I didn't know if I keep referencing him. Say hi to Eskel.
What's up, guys?
But so we came from the second wife, and our mom took the last name. She just had Grant, and so my dad on my birth certificate is Kyle Grant, but I don't even know it.
Hold on. Is Grant your real last name or your made up one?
It's made up.
What?
Fake, yeah.
Are you
It's
a
just
Kingston?
completely fake.
Is that what is it?
If we took our dad's last name, it would be Johnson.
Okay.
But
But if he took his dad's last name, it would be Kingston,
Kingston.
though.
Yeah. So technically, if you did it the legal way, it would be Kingston. Yeah.
You guys are you're all Kingstons.
Yeah.
You're a fake name on a fake name.
Yeah. Fake. Well.
Because
technically-
Johnson, which was a fake name.
No, I don't know that Johnson was fake.
Well, Johnson was our grandma's correct last name.
Yeah,
Her
but
maiden.
she
Got it.
came from the FLDS, and I think that's
Yeah.
why she just decided to keep her maiden name.
Yeah, because Johnson's a pretty big name in FLDS.
And she
culture.
married the leader at the time, which was our grandpa, as the 6th wife. And then, so my dad got that Johnson name from
Got
her.
it. Like with the different last names, you at least know kind of where people come from. Because if
yeah.
it was all Kingston or whatever,
It would be so confusing.
it would be like, wait, we're all the same. Yeah. So.
And that's why, like, I kind of like that we were Grant, because we were the only Grants in the order. So they know who the Grants are. And at first, the Grants had a good name, and now the 4 of
It
us
was
have
good
left,
in the
they have a bad
beginning,
name.
now it's really bad.
Hold
it's a
on.
bad
There's
reputation.
only 4 of you that have left of the Grants?
4 of the Grants that have left, yeah. So you have four moms, and how many kids?
44 siblings.
Okay, so we have 3 and over, what is it, 32 now?
32.
So we've had 4 leave of my mom's, which of 10, which is pretty good.
I feel at home. High five. I do not talk to very many people that have dozens of siblings, so
yeah,
it's
a
like
lot.
you guys
But
get it.
Our family was like modest size because the leader has 27 wives and over 300 kids. So was your family like modest or like pretty big for the group you came from?
Not the biggest for sure, not the biggest.
Yeah.
But above average. Because like my grandfather had like 70 something kids. There's other families that have 70 something kids. My dad was like, I remember growing up thinking like how much of an overachiever he was from all of his other uncles, or all my other uncles, because he did have more than my other uncles. Did you guys have the whole thing that, like, why did you need to have a lot of kids? I want to see if it's the same.
To replenish the earth?
Yes. Okay.
That's the right answer.
Yeah.
That's why polygamy was justifiable, was because I would be like, Dad, how come I can have multiple husbands? Then he would laugh and be like, well, how are you going to repopulate the earth like that?
Yes.
But I'm like, that doesn't make sense, because then you're going to have all these single men. And they have 40-year-old men that are never going to get married. Because I looked it up, because I wanted to have my debate right. The average person, you're more likely to have a boy than a girl, too. So it's like, if God wanted all of these polygamists, why wouldn't he make more women in the world? But then they were like, there's going to be more righteous men or more righteous women than men, so did they say that in your group?
I have no idea. I think we actually ignored the math altogether.
I was a woman, though, so I was like, this math is not adding up, and I don't want to have to do this.
Yeah,
But
it's fascinating.
you're like, just ignore the question. Just don't question, and you'll get to the kingdom of heaven.
Be a good follower. Follow as though by a hair. You know, obedience is key.
Yeah, they would say if I asked too many questions, it was like, do not question God. And then you would feel guilty, like you're questioning God.
Did you guys ever have the whole put it on the shelf idea? Like if something didn't make sense, to like, don't throw it away, but just put it on the shelf.
Oh, yeah. There was what did Paul say? He said, everyone, it may not make sense, but everyone is like a piece of a car part, and everyone, to get the gears going and the whole car to work, everyone has their place. And it may not make sense right now, but you need to just do what they say, and then it will make sense later.
That sounds great. That's a
He was
perfect
like,
analogy.
King of analogies, really. My understanding of the Centennial group was that it is a branch off of the FLDS. Am I wrong?
You're not wrong. That might be good to do a quick history thing. So you just called it the Centennial group, just for everybody watching. It's also known as the work of Jesus Christ. So this is the history of the bulk of the fundamentalist movement. There was like the split off of the LDS church, which I think is also worth noting in case there's anybody that's watching that's like, is this the regular Mormon church? Is there similarities? Obviously, fundamentalist Mormonism is different from the LDS church, but I think it's being disingenuous for people that try to make it feel like there's no connection to the LDS church at all, because there obviously is.
Because we all follow Joseph Smith.
All follow Joseph Smith, and Brigham Young and all those first leaders were polygamists, right? And then there was an actual change in the LDS doctrine. Like, all of fundamentalist movement, in my opinion, is like, we're like the LDS church's shadow that they're trying to ignore, in a sense, because they were racist. A lot of fundamentalist churches are still racist. They live polygamy. Fundamentalist Mormon churches, of course, still live polygamy. So there was a split off where, in fact, your church did this, but the fundamentalist movement that really kicked a lot of churches off was like early 1900s. So the LDS church made their change where they stopped living polygamy. Many LDS church people still lived polygamy within the LDS church privately, even some of the actual apostles. But then eventually they got a lot of pressure from the US government and stuff like that. And so the LDS church then started excommunicating people that were polygamous. Since that time, there's been a lot of breakoffs. Bunch of different factioned groups. And a big part of even with the factions within FLDS culture, usually it's about who's in charge. Which is not surprising, because even back to Joseph Smith, a tradition from Joseph Smith was like, which church is right? Like, he was big on priesthood and authority. So there's a lot of fundamentalist Mormon groups that are like, who's actually in charge? So when it comes to mine, so the FLDS church is the most infamous, Warren Jeffs and stuff like that, right? But one generation before him, my church and his church were together. In fact, there's other breakoffs also that were once together. Like AUB broke off somewhere in there, but there like several of the people were in the same church.
Was it because Warren became the prophet?
Nope, not at all. And there's a separate point that I want to talk about with Warren really quick while we're on it, and then I'll go back to how we came. A lot of people in the outside world look at the FLDS, for example, and Warren, and they think that he created that church. No, he took advantage of the things that were already there, and I think it's important to make that distinction because, like, he took advantage of where the group was already going. Like, it was coming from like all the way from the beginning of the fundamentalist movement to listen to your leaders, listen to authority, and then he arguably shouldn't have ever became the leader, but because people for generations had been trained to listen to their leader. His dad was the leader at the time. And when his dad died, the way he slid in there was so sneaky. He was like, I'm speaking for my father. In fact, he spoke for his dad while his dad was alive. And so people were being trained, oh, Warren's speaking for his dad, Rulin. But then Rulin died. And here's another thing that's wild about FLDS is they were teaching their people that Rulin was never going to die.
Our church did that too.
With yours?
There's a story, and obviously I wasn't there at the time because I was in heaven before being born. But there's a story though, the leader before died, and they kept him in a bathtub for 3 days thinking he was going to be resurrected.
The conditions create some similar ideas. So long story short, really quick on Warren, and then I'll go back to how ours broke off. How Warren stayed in power, or got in power, is, of course, Roland Jeffs died. He's a man. And they were like, he's going to live till he's 300. And then they started this whole thing of like, his body's dead, but he's still here. He's just in the other room. And then Warren was still speaking for his dad and then took power. That's how Warren did it. But he couldn't have done it if the organization was not already there. So this is how our church broke off. the generation just before Warren's was a generation where there was a priesthood council. Okay, there was his dad, Roland. There was the main prophet, who was called Leroy Johnson.
Okay, that's where we're related to him.
Yes.
Yep.
And then there was two other men, Alma Timpson and Jonathan Marion Hammond. Okay, this is
Like
where
a council of multiple people that are running it.
Yes. A lot of these fundamentalist Mormon churches, and honestly, even the very founding of Mormonism back to Joseph Smith, had this whole obsession about who's in charge, whose church is right. And Joseph Smith started Mormonism because no church was right, you know. Right. Like, that's where it starts. There was this leadership disagreement of who should be in charge, okay? Right. Some of the men in the authority was like, one man's fully in charge. Right. Just like, and he has the ultimate say. Leroy Johnson is the prophet. Others said, actually, we hold it together. Like, it's the council that has it, because one man could just, you know.
Say whatever.
Yeah. And so there was a very big disagreement. And then finally, Leroy Johnson kicked off two members of the council.
Oh, wow.
That believed that it should be a council and not the one thing. The two men he kicked off was a guy named Alma Timpson and J.M. Hammond, or Jonathan Marion Hammond.
Wow.
Those men drove down the road 5 minutes from Colorado City and created the Centennial Group, the work of Jesus Christ. So even though I grew up here in the Salt Lake area, the headquarters is down there, so I traveled there a lot, and I would drive through Colorado City. My church members, like people that were in my church, still lived in Colorado City, even though the main church is in Centennial Park. But you would never know that it was ever the same church, because you did not talk to anybody else that was in the other church. They did not talk to us because everybody was afraid of each other, of who's going to make somebody's going to break your testimony, and you're going to apostatize if you talk to their FLDS, and they had the same fear of, like, don't talk to anybody in the work because they could shake your faith.
Right.
Like, it's bananas.
On one of my lives when I went down there, there was a difference between FLDS members and Centennial group members.
In visual, you're saying?
In visual and how they treated us.
Yes.
FLDS seemed more like stay away, and Centennial group people were like, oh, do you guys need help? Because they saw that we were fixing up a home for the FLDS people to like kind of run to, type of thing.
FLDS culture was way more insular, way more closed off to society. And I think you know this too, like talking to other people in fundamentalist groups, some are more liberal or more out there. Some, we're wearing pants. Oh my gosh, that's
and you guys didn't wear dresses.
Yes, we did.
You did?
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember how the girls.
Some girls did. Well, they didn't wear pastel. They didn't do the whole. But it was like just a dress from like some department store. But some girls, like my sisters, like rebelled and they're like, I want to wear pants. But for sure, it's still a thing in the work today. Like the main prophet of the council, because now it's like there's still a council, but there's still one in charge of the whole council, and he'll still get up and like I remember when I was there preaching, because they've only been out for like 4 or 5 years, but he would preach against women wearing pants as like you're so
it's so
evil
like,
if you wear pants. Like I couldn't wear this, like it's
work, but it's also garments, right? They have to wear garments. It's the modesty thing, right? You gotta be modest.
Does your audience know about the whole garments thing? So
I've touched on the garments before, but in the order, we are buried in garments. We actually don't wear garments until we die. So
good, because you should only be found dead in that. That's the thing.
Because it's so ugly.
So, because the LDS Church has garments, there's this whole idea of what are the garments. Basically, they're underwear that are special, right? That they're magic. In fact, there's folklore and there's stories of like people that got in car accidents or their home burned and they were protected because they were wearing the garments. So the garments are, again, basically just long underwear. Like in my church, it was just like literally like a full one-piece thing, and they were to protect you.
To your wrists, to your ankles?
Yeah.
Wow.
All the way. And so to protect you physically, spiritually, sexually, all the ways. And that's why you had to wear long sleeves. That was one of the reasons, because it was supposed to be hidden from the gaze of the wicked.
That's what they said?
Gaze, by the way.
G-A-Z-E?
Not Gays. Like, just to be clear, the eye, like, nobody was supposed to.
Okay, so like looking.
Yes, nobody.
Okay, I was like.
So there were times when I was younger, I'm going on a job site in the summer. My dad was in construction, where it is like 100 degrees. I'm wearing that under my clothes and full-on button-up shirt and everything. To me, that was more suspicious, because every single person I ever walked by and got to know in the construction site, why are you wearing so many clothes?
But
I'm
were
like,
you guys trained? Sorry, I
No,
forget
great.
this question if I don't. Were you guys trained to lie to outsiders?
oh yeah, that was a thing for you too?
Yeah.
What did you
They coached us, and because I worked at a grocery store and I was the cashier, and they coached us on what to say. Like if someone was asking for a job, they coached us on what to say, because order people would say,
Oh, yeah.
hey, can you charge it to this account? And they would do that, and then an outsider would see and be like, well, I want an account here. So they coached me on saying, oh, well, it was a limited time offer for only a specific time, so you can't be a part of it.
Oh, dude, there was us and Gentiles. Like, that's the only two groups that mattered in my upbringing. Us and Gentiles. Now, there were apostates. They
That's what I was
became,
gonna ask.
yeah.
Isn't an apostate worse than
Oh
a
yeah.
Gentile?
Oh yeah. Because an apostate
Oh, for
knew
those of you who
better.
don't know, an apostate is someone who's a part of their religion and then they leave.
Which is like worse than if you were
Never took known about
yes.
it.
Yes. In fact, man, that could be a whole psychological discussion right then.
I hope you do like an episode on this with your podcast, and like,
Yeah.
because you could talk for hours about even just that. I did have a question about like, because for us it was like, outsiders are never going to make it into heaven. Like maybe they can make it to the lowest degree, because there's 3 degrees, right? But they will never have the chance to make it to the celestial degree.
Right.
Someone like me who left, terrible. You're not going to go into heaven. You're going to hell. But because I'm talking out against the group now,
Yeah.
going into a lower level of hell.
Yes,
doing that.
you're going probably. You're probably like an outer darkness, or if you're a guy, son of perdition. So I guess you're a daughter of perdition or something.
Daughter of perdition. I've never heard that, but I like it. It sounds nice. I don't know if you guys had this distinction, but in our group it was like, if you're a good person and you're white on the outside, you might get to the lowest. But if you are not white, it's basically pointless. You're just
Yeah.
here waiting to go to hell.
Kind of. The way we were raised and taught was you will be judged based on what you were given. So that's why if you're in the true church that you were born into, like, what a blessing. Because you are given so much and you can go really high. You can go to the celestial kingdom because you're in it. Now, if you're in this life and you weren't born into the true religion, you're probably not going to make it to the celestial kingdom. You're probably going to make it to the bottom one, as you're saying, right? But what we were taught was, if somebody died and they were outside of the work, the order, whatever, the true church, then they will have a chance to accept the truth in the next life. Yeah.
We didn't believe that.
So you're just the best you could do is get to do they know about the 3 levels of heaven?
My viewers do, but
Okay.
let me explain it again. Like,
Yeah.
in all polygamy, everyone I've interviewed, everyone
And regular Mormonism too.
Yeah,
That's
they
again,
believe-
like,
that's
there's
true. Joseph Smith taught that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It's a Joseph Smith teaching. So Mormons, FLDS, AUB, Centennial, FLDS, the Order, all believe in 3 degrees of glory, right? And the only people who make it to the celestial kingdom are polygamists. And, in the Order, it was Order members, right, that live polygamy. And then there's a celestial.
And then I
telestial-
think the regular Mormon church, they have some other way of getting to the celestial kingdom now that's not polygamy, because they don't believe in polygamy anymore or whatever.
And I believe, I've heard LDS members say that top level means you get to be a god over your own world.
Yeah.
And so I don't remember if the Order, I think some people believe that, some people didn't, but the celestial kingdom was the best, right? Then there's the telestial and then the terrestrial. Am I saying that right?
I think it's celestial, terrestrial, telestial. I think the terrestrial is the middle. Celestial, terrestrial, telestial.
Did you guys have this talk? Because I would be like, what if I made it to the celestial kingdom and I had family down here? And they would have the explanation, well, the one on the top can travel wherever, but the ones down there gotta stay down there.
Totally.
They said the same
Totally.
thing.
God.
They're allowed to come up here.
Yeah, and the bottom one, you could have the sense of God, but you would not get to actually hang out with God.
Only the cool kids go to the club. with God.
Exactly.
That's funny.
But Joseph Smith said if you could see how beautiful even the celestial kingdom was, that you would end your life to get there. And so I always thought growing up, being the rebellious critical thinker that I was like, then why am I working so hard?
Yeah.
Like if I'm gonna love it, no matter where I end up,
then I'm just gonna slide by.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm also an overachiever, so I definitely wanted to go after the celestial kingdom.
Yeah, for me it was like, I don't know, as soon as I started to have hormones and realized I was gonna have to share the person, I was like, I would just like, and then have to tell my daughters to do that, and like seeing my mom did not like polygamy. She wasn't born in it.
Thank goodness.
Yeah.
So you got to see it not work for
Oh,
her.
yeah, I watched
That's
my
amazing.
dad try to run her over with his car. Like, it was bad. And I think part of it is she married her older sister's husband. And she was kind of coerced into it because she was 17 and they had all these dreams that God wanted it. And so then she marries him. She actually liked someone else, but she married him out of fear and guilt. And then obviously it's going to end up in a shit show after that. So I watched it and I was like, why are they promoting polygamy so much? Why are all these polygamists who I know are miserable, their kids are neglected, they're promoting it, but it's misery. Like, I'm not going to do it. It's hell on earth. And they would always be like, and I'm sure they said this in your group, this group is the closest thing to heaven on earth. Did they say that?
Yeah,
and
totally.
I'd be like, this is hell.
This sucks.
Yeah,
but
I hate all of you.
But what they would also say was, again, this is a fantastic psychological trick. Was this is like a test in a sense where yes, it's tough, but this is like a blip in your eternity. So just get through this tough part. Get over your jealousy. I was so controlled by that.
Yep.
Like just how you are like a bad person being cast out because you're speaking out against it. I had that deep throughout all my teenage years when I was getting hormones. Like I was so afraid of, what if I kissed a girl and then held her hand, and heaven forbid, what if we had sex? Like I would be cast into outer darkness because I was given the truth and I was supposed to save myself till marriage. So it's worse than if I was born outside of it. Like I remember wishing when I was a teenager, like I wish I was kind of born a Gentile because I could have sex and I couldn't know better. I was jealous over my neighbors that were born.
Damn you.
Eric, why do you get to go have a girlfriend? But
that was what my next question was, because we're talking about the belief systems. So dating was a big no-no.
Big
obviously.
no-no.
So
Yeah.
in our group, it was you couldn't kiss till your wedding day, you can't hold hands unless you're engaged, and then the leadership has to approve of it.
Yeah.
Is that the same thing?
Well, those things are all true. Where definitely never dating. Like I remember making the oath to myself that I was not going to ever have a girlfriend until, well, ever, and then I was gonna get married.
Get married.
Yeah. But my church, fundamentalist or the FLDS does this, and certainly the Word practices arranged marriages. So the church leaders, not the parents, but the church leaders arrange people to get married, which
I am curious though, like, how do they decide who you're supposed to marry, and like, are you supposed to have, because in our group it was like we had to pray and get direction.
that happened also.
Really?
Yeah. See, this is what I find fascinating. Like, it's crazy that I'm in an interview because I'm also just fascinated by how there's similarities, even though completely separate groups.
Mm-hmm. And our group knew of the FLDS. I didn't know about the Centennial group till I left.
Yeah.
But they were like, oh, they have a false prophet. You know, the AUB has they have all.
And we knew that the Kingston group had a false prophet too. Like, that's the fantastic thing is when you're growing up in it, it's obvious to everyone that everyone else is wrong. Like, there's this fantastic quote from Mark Twain that I learned after.
I love Mark. Is it the same one? It is easier to fool someone than to convince someone that they've been fooled.
Yes, I love that one. And there's another one about religion. So Mark Twain's, like, one of them was the ease of which I know that another man's religion is folly is enough to make me question my own. Something like that.
That honestly was one thing that made me question mine, was because I was like, wait a minute, if we just happen to be the true church. But I guess it's kind of the opposite, because I knew Warren Jeff's church believed they were the true one. I knew the AUB church and then the LDS. So I'm like, well, what makes us any different than them?
Exactly.
Is that what your thought process was? Yeah. I mean, obviously leaving, you have it's not just one day it clicks and you just leave.
It's piece by piece.
Mm-hmm. Can we talk about, you did get an arranged marriage?
Yeah, I'll talk about it a little bit. So I had an arranged marriage.
I'm just curious the process. Did they come to you and say?
Yeah, so how it works in FLDS culture, some women can get like an impression, and then what ends up happening is they go to the church leaders, and it's called, they turn themselves in. which I find since leaving such an appropriate phrase. Like when you get turned in, when you turn yourself in out in the world, it's like you're getting arrested or something.
Take me.
Yeah, take me. Like that's what it was called. Like women go and turn themselves in, right? And basically my church took like the idea that Disney shows like to the extreme, like that there's somebody for you and it's already preordained. Like you have somebody that's for you, they're out there. And don't you want God in your life? Don't you want God to give you your spouse? So why would you date when God can tell you exactly who your spouse is, right? So more than that, like it was actually shame that if you did date and it wasn't from God, this is a big thing in the work, is if you get anything good in life that seems good, but it was not directly given from the church leaders, it will turn into sour grapes and worse. Like it will be like a big thing. So if you go date and you're like seizing blessings that God didn't give you, it's such a mind fuck. So you need to make sure that the things you're getting are actually from the right source, from God through the church leaders. Right. So the same is true with your spouse. So you let God give them impressions of who you made covenants with, promises with before you were born. Yeah. This is the psychology, and like, yeah, I want to know who I promised to be married. And it just so happens to be
the same thing, because we have the same, like you have to have the one you're supposed to marry. There's one
supposed to marry.
Yeah. And for us it was like, you don't want to be dating because think of it like another analogy, a present, and every time you kiss a boy you're tearing that present for your spouse, for your husband. Yeah. And I was always like, what if I have a fifth wife? He already has kids. Like, what am I saving this present for?
Exactly. So how it worked in my case is the girl got an impression. Well, she got an impression that I was hers. Oh. So she went to the church leaders and said, and they were like, she's like, I want to get married, blah, blah, blah. And the main prophet was like, okay, have you had any impressions? Like, do you have anybody in mind? And she said my name. And then he went and talked to the other council members, the brethren with it. And then they came back and said, yep, that's the one. And then one day, do you guys do the whole after church go shake hands?
There's a long line outside of Paul. Paul has the longest.
I love that this is a thing. So after church everybody just lines up and shakes the leader's hand. It's so funny. How are you? Hello. Some people kiss him or whatever. Like, okay. So so he's like, do you want to? He said, come see me after, and I went and saw him after, and what's kind of funny, I've not shared this at all. I've not shared any of my marriage story. At first, he gave me the wrong name. What? He mixed it up with some other girl.
You're like, okay.
He's like, you're going to marry this girl? And I was like, huh. And in my head, I'm thinking, you sure? Like, I've waited all this for this? Yeah, and so I was like, well, I waited this long. I wanted to have sex, but I also wanted to do the right thing. And so God's telling me that this is going to be my first wife. And that's another thing. As a guy, I'm like, well, this is just my first wife.
Oh, I hate that.
I know.
But how old were you?
24, almost 25.
Oh, wow. Wait, I guess I have a question now, because it still was a council, but this was the main guy?
Yeah, so there's a council that's the main guy, just because God wants you to be orderly. Oh, so it's almost like check in with him, but it is a council. So the main dude.
Can you say his name?
John Timpson. Yeah, I don't know why that, like, it's such a thing. So John Timpson is the main dude.
The main, leader of the Centennial.
Yeah, and he's probably the most psychotic of all of them. Like,
Great. They usually are.
Yeah, like he gets really excited over the pulpit and yells at everybody. And he's like,
really?
He has this, like, there was this time where he's like yelling and getting after the congregation for even having friends that aren't in the religion. Mm-hmm. He's like, because they're gonna risk their own salvation by having friends. He's like, if you even sit in the presence of an anti-priesthood speaker, meaning somebody that's not in it and they might talk against the authority, right, you are risking your very soul.
For you to even sit in the presence of an anti-priesthood speaker is risking your very soul. If you've got friends like that, you ought to get rid of them so damn fast. It makes their heads spin. And if any of you here are anti-priesthood, you heard it today. Get out.
Like, it is not like a church that feels welcoming. Like, it is like, you women aren't listening to your husbands. Like, some of you wear pants. Like, it's wild.
It's all guilt and shame based.
Yeah, but you don't know that when you're in that. When you're in that, you're like, I'm so grateful that God's so nice to me that he'll tell me the truth. If I was in the Mormon church, they're so soft. And the church leaders are just, like, we made fun of the LDS church leaders of being like the way that they were just so soft in general conference and like, dear brothers and sisters. And we were lucky because we had God telling us the truth, even though it hurt. Anyway, where were we going? Oh, the marriage.
Where are we going with that?
So the whole marriage thing. So John Timpson tells me, this is who you're marrying, and I'm driving home, and then he calls me on the phone. He got my number somehow. I was like, not her. I told you the wrong one. Like this other one. I was like, okay, cool.
Were you like, thank God?
Yeah, I was. Yeah, but I'm not married anymore, obviously, having left and whatever. But yeah,
How soon did they start pressuring polygamy?
What do you mean? Oh,
Like,
on us.
I mean, like on you as a couple. Obviously, polygamy is a thing your whole
Well,
life. But
yeah.
how soon after? Because I never was married in the religion, but like in our religion, it was like, get another wife. What are you doing? You want to get your priest? You want to get
Right.
into this? You know. So when did you get pressured?
Polygamy growing up was like this huge blessing. Again, where do you get your blessings from? From God. Mm-hmm. Who does God have on earth to give you the blessings if you want a good blessing? From the church leaders. So you don't go, like, it's very much frowned upon and shamed if you're trying to become a polygamist, strangely.
Really?
Unless they give it to you.
Right.
I wanted to be a polygamist. Mm-hmm. Like, I thought, like, I was like, I mean, another wife? Like,
because Celestial Kingdom. Yeah.
Celestial Kingdom? Yeah, that's what I was saying. Like, it's advancement. Like, the entire thing. Like, was baptized, got the Aaronic priesthood, got the priest, got the Melchizedek priesthood, got my wife. After a few years, I want to get my second wife. Like, I want to keep on going. Like, yeah, I was like on track, right? So, so the pressure was always there, right? Of like, whenever you are given the opportunity, seize the opportunity. Right. God wants to bless you, seize the blessing. And certainly the pressure was on her as well. But she was, I mean, it's what we were in. Like, I grew up with 4 moms. She had like 5 or 6 moms that she grew up with. So it was just like normal.
In our group, it was always like, I mean, you saw too how the person who was closest related to the leadership always had the most wives. It was almost like a...
Shocking.
It was an interesting system over there. But anyways, I kind of wanted to shift now to when you started to realize, I don't know if this is what I want to be a part of. I guess it took after getting married and having kids.
Well, it started before that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What started it, do you think?
I know exactly what started it. I know the day. I started to get goosebumps just going back there.